You know, I remember moving to San Francisco in 1986 in October, and one of the first things I discovered was this vibrant community of artists doing something called open studios, where you could walk in and see them working. And I remember thinking, boy, what a cool idea and a really cool city. Well, our guest now is Heather Holt Villyard, Executive Director of ArtSpan, producers of that really cool event that's just gotten cooler and bigger, yes?
Exactly.
Welcome,
yeah,
Heather.
37 years.
Now, you said that you have a similar memory of your first time to San Francisco.
I do. I moved in October of 2001 and stumbled upon the North Beach Open Studios by chance and had the same reaction that what a great city to have so many working artists that are so generously sharing their spaces with us.
And then did you think at that time, wow, I'm going to head the organization that produces it?
No idea.
All right, so take me so take me through the last decade. How did you become from an art lover to the person who produces ArtSpan Open Studios?
Moved here as an artist and knew that I wanted to be in the backbone helping artists have a really good quality of life and opportunities. So it was starting at CCA, and then I moved
California College of the Arts,
which was then CCAC, and then moved on to SF MoMA and worked at the SICA group for 6 years, and then this great opportunity came up, and I jumped on it because it was such an amazing grassroots organization with so much potential, and I had such fond memories of discovering it.
Yeah. Now let's talk a little bit about ArtSpan versus open studios, because I think a lot of people throughout California are aware of open studios, especially the ones in the former Hunters Point shipyard, which is now Shipyard, big development. I remember when I first came here, I met an artist who was working in an old submarine dock, and another who was working near the shipyard. I just thought it was a really cool place to do art. But I'd never heard of ArtSpan, so tell me how the two interrelate.
Well, in 1991, ArtSpan actually was formed by a community of supporters that wanted to make sure that the event had a longevity, being the oldest and largest open studios in the country. So the ArtSpan, SF Open Studios is a program of ArtSpan, but we do so much more to educate the public about the value of fine art and visual artists working in our community, as well as working with youth to develop the next generation of working artists and the artists themselves to nurture and support their careers.
Right. Now you say it is the oldest open studios in the country.
And largest.
And the largest. So how has the impact of open studios been felt across the country? I mean, do you ever have people call you and say, wow, it's a cool idea in SF, maybe I should do it in Dayton? Yeah,
definitely. We had a visitor from Philadelphia that they had an open studios program, but we're looking at our model because we have such a long track record. So there are open studios all over the country in many different cities. Even in the Bay Area, there's 5 different open studios programs. So we're a benchmark for other organizations who we have it easy in San Francisco because we're so geographically constrained that it's easy to divide up the city. So it's a real pleasure to be able to share with people how we coordinate and mobilize.
Well, and talk a little bit about that division within the city. I mean, when I think open studios, I think Hunters Point because that was the first one I went to. But the open studios movement is all over the 7x7 of San Francisco, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
So like what parts of town?
There's main hubs, and I think the Hunters Point Shipyard is one of the primary, people anticipate the Hunters Point Open Shipyard every year. They go out there in spring and fall. There's also the Mission, Soma, and then Fort Mason in the independent neighborhoods.
And they're on different weekends, so it's not all the same. So it's really spread out over almost 6 weeks, correct?
4 weekends.
4 weekends,
Yeah.
Now, what has been the biggest surprise for you, being in San Francisco now about 10 years? The quality of the art, the quality of the artists, the diversity of the art, or kind of...
the quality of the people making the art, and just this real integrity to maintain a working studio in San Francisco, which can be pretty complicated for finding space or finding jobs or finding places to live, but to be able to really work through that and dedicate your life to being a working artist, I think is really impressive. And
well, I mean, let's talk a little bit about that. I have many friends who are visual artists and many friends who are also in the performing arts, and it's not a career you go into because you think, gosh, I'm going to make $1 million right away or be able to afford to buy a house in San Francisco.
Definitely.
How does an artist make a living in San Francisco in 2012?
Well, I think that's what's interesting about the Open Studios platform is that it's really going direct with the public, and it's not depending on a gallery system, which can be there's only so many galleries to support so many artist shows per year. So for the artist to actually learn about being a small business and treating their career as such, a lot of our artists have great success selling their work and making a living
Right.
through their art sales through open studios.
Now, besides being the producer of the event, does ArtSpan also assist with artists in another way? Like you talked about the business of selling art. The artist that I mentioned before that did his work in a submarine berth, as it were, at Hunters Point Shipyard, he was what I like to call a pure artist.
Right.
His art was out there, it was incredible, but if you asked him, you know, how do you invoice your clients? He's like, oh, I don't know, I just kind of figure it out as I go along. Artists need to be business people nowadays too, don't they?
Definitely, and it's something that you don't learn in school. A lot of our artists that we work with are second career artists, so they're discovering how to make a living and be professional in a creative industry.
Yeah.
So we relaunched a program called Make Your Art Your Business, and it was developed about 10 years ago, and we do 10 workshops a year on marketing, pricing, inventory systems, DIY marketing, social media. So we really want to encourage artists to learn about their business side because it's not something that's necessarily equated with the creative process.
Right.
And if you ask, a lot of artists are really intimidated by talking to the public. So to be able to have that bravery to open up your studio and interface for 6 hours a day all weekend long.
Yeah, well, it's kind of exhausting.
Oh, completely.
I mean, and I know some artists who, you know, say to me, I just want to paint or sculpt or whatever their medium is. The idea of kind of getting out in front of people, I've seen it sometimes, and artist friends of mine, they're like, can't I just stay here and you do the selling?
I have plenty of artist friends who would never even consider doing open studios because of that fear, and also just putting yourself out there. It's a very vulnerable thing.
Yeah.
So.
But it seems like it's grown. You said there are artists for whom this is a new and kind of uncomfortable experience.
Right.
But at least my knowledge of open studios is that every year you got more artists.
We do have more artists, and we also have been doing more programs to support artists that don't necessarily want to participate in open studios for whatever reason, if they don't have a space or if they have a relationship with a gallery. But we also participated in the SF Fine Art Fairs this year and had a juried exhibition and had a booth at the SF Art Pad.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was another way that we are able to extend our services to artists. And
well, you know, that brings up an interesting point. You talked about Art Pad, which is a great event. I know it's put on by, I think, the Joie de Vivre hotel founder, Chip Conley. And then you've got things like the San Francisco International Art Fair. You've got Art Market. Would those things have existed without open studios? I mean, it seems like open studios was the thing that put San Francisco on the map as far as, not fine, I don't want to say fine art, that's not the phrase I want to use, but museum art. Because there's a lot of difference between something at MoMA, which is beautifully presented and curated, and here you're actually seeing the artist work.
I think they're very different crowds.
Yeah.
The people that go to fairs are definitely interested in the market of art, and the open studios guests or goers are definitely more adventurous, I'd say, because you're really looking at an unfiltered view of the art world and the art ecosystem of how it all works together.
And do you think you get, do the artists feel that they get, I hate that phrase, serious collectors at open studios?
Definitely,
And,
yeah. There's people that return year after year, going back to the workshop series in terms of providing artists the information on how to follow up with leads. You know, development is a huge part of sales. So when you come into an artist studio, we're trying to educate the artists on how to make sure that you're tracking, you know, potential customers, clients, and how to keep relationships strong for years to come so that those people will keep coming back, and also developing collectors. There's art buyers, but then developing a buyer into a collector is very complicated.
Yes.
So we're trying to work with all aspects of.
How do you think the galleries feel now? I mean, do they feel that this is competition or something that helps them? Because I'm sure there are artists who invite the public into their studios during open studios who also do have gallery representation. So it's not just artists who don't have any gallery representation, correct?
Correct.
So do you think the galleries feel this is a competition or a way just to promote art in general?
I don't think that they see it as a competition. I think that, if anything, we're all colleagues in the same industry. So we should be educating as many people as possible about the value of collecting and living with art and communicating through art and a gallery or studio. You know, it's all just a really great place to come together and have something that you're unifying over.
Right. So the first week in November, is that like the day after tax day for accountants for you? You're like, once October's over, boy, I get to relax, because I imagine you try to see every one of the artist studios, or as many as you can.
Yes, I tried. Last year I went around with a hard copy of our guide and tried to collect as many signatures as possible. And it is absolutely impossible to visit every artist in the city.
Because if you did, how many artists in round numbers take part in open studios?
800 to 1,000.
Wow.
So you would need to clone yourself to be everywhere at once.
Yeah.
But I really try to use our website and the printed guide as a reference to pick out artists that I'm particularly interested in, try to see old friends, but definitely try to meet new artists and spread myself out as much as possible, but definitely looking at my own, interests in particular artists, and that drives my itinerary, if you will.
In our last few moments, talk to me about other aspects of ArtSpan with which you think the community might not be familiar.
Well, in November, as you mentioned, it is a big, little bit of a downtime, but we roll right into planning our art auction in the spring, and that occurs in March. So we have about 100 artists that donate artwork to the auction, and that's a anticipated event for both the artists and the collectors. And then we also participate in Spring Open Studios, which is planned by the artists themselves, and do promotion for them. And we will be participating in ArtPad again this coming May, so we'll have a competition and a jury with our artists to select artists from Open Studios to participate in that platform.
So even in a difficult economy, for people say, wow, it's a difficult time for the arts, Open Studios is showing that there are artists who are working and making money and making a go of it.
We haven't seen the numbers drop.
Yeah,
so
it's only gotten better every year.
It's only gotten better every year,
Thanks
definitely.
so much. We've been speaking with Heather Holt Villyard of ArtSpan, producers of Open Studios. I'm David Perry, your host at 10%. Thanks for watching. See you next week.